Hello, BrainHack Vanderbilt. We hope you're enjoying the program so far and had the opportunity to dive into some exciting projects. We are thrilled to welcome you to today's career panel at the cross-section of open science and neuroscience. Our goal with the session is to provide you with the insights into diverse career paths within neuroscience while emphasizing the value of open science. We hope you walk away feeling inspired, equipped with actionable advice, and a deeper understanding about how open science can shape your own research and career journey. To help us achieve this, we've invited 6 incredible panelists who are trailblazers in their field. Their contributions extend beyond neuroscience research into the realm of open science, whether it's developing open source tools that empower the community to advance research or creating educational resources that make learning more accessible for everyone. We encourage you to soak up their advice and ask questions. If at any time you have any questions, please feel free to post them into the panel channel on the Discord. We hope you'll leave the session with a better understanding of how you too can make an impact, not only in research, but in promoting collaboration and accessibility in science. Without further ado, let's introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Richard. I'll start introducing Dr. Adina Wagner. Dr. Wagner is a scientific coordinator and software developer at the Psychoinformatics Lab at Jülich Research Center in Jülich, Germany. Her research focuses on advancing open and reproducible scientific practices in neuroscience through open source software development. She played a key role in developing DataLad, a free and open source distributed data management system that enhances data tracking, structure, reproducibility, and collaboration while integrating with widely used data infrastructure. Dr. Wagner earned her PhD in neuroinformatics at the Heinrich Heine University, Düsseldorf, Germany, with projects intersecting experimental psychology, MEG, and research data management in high-throughput computing.
Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jérôme Lecoq. Dr. Jérôme Lecoq is a neuroscientist at the Allen Institute, leading cortical computation research in behaving animals. He pioneered OpenScope, a revolutionary open neuroscience platform that has democratized access to advanced brain recording technologies and generated extensive public data sets that accelerate neuroscience discovery. This platform enabled researchers globally to conduct experiments within the Allen Institute Brain Observatory platform and record neuronal activity across the mouse brain. Before joining the Allen Institute in 2015, Dr. Lecoq completed his postdoctoral work in Mark Schnitzer's lab at Stanford and earned his PhD in neuroscience from the Pierre and Marie Curie University in Paris.
I'll next introduce Dr. Megan Petter. Wow, I'm so sorry. Dr. Megan Peters. And Dr. Peters is an associate professor in cognitive sciences at the University of California, Irvine, investigating how the brain represents uncertainty and processes noisy, incomplete information. Her work spans cognitive and computational neuroscience, engineering, psychology, cognitive science, and philosophy. She has also transformed computational neuroscience education as the co-founder and president and chair of the board of Neuromatch, where Neuromatch Academy has trained over 15,000 students across 120 countries through its innovative online platform, combining interactive tutorials with hands-on collaborative projects. Dr. Peters earned her PhD in computational cognitive neuroscience in psychology from UCLA, where she also completed her postdoc.
Next, I'll introduce Dr. Katja Heuer. Dr. Katja Heuer is a postdoctoral researcher at Institut Pasteur in Paris, France, where she studies brain evolution and development, specifically brain organization and folding using neuroimaging and histology. Dr. Heuer has contributed to open neuroscience community by developing a host of groundbreaking tools to facilitate access to open data and foster global collaboration. Some of these tools include BrainBox and MicroDraw, allowing researchers to analyze and collaborate on publicly available neuroimaging and histology datasets. Previously, Dr. Heuer completed her PhD in neuroscience at the Max Planck Institute in Germany.
I'll next introduce Dr. James Booth. Dr. Booth is the Patricia and Rhodes Hart Professor of Psychology and Human Development at Vanderbilt here. His research investigates brain mechanisms underlying language, reading, and cognitive development in typical and atypical populations. Dr. Booth is a pioneer in open science, having established the largest openly available developmental neuroimaging datasets globally, with over 1,000 participants and 12,000 scans focused on reading, math, attention development in children. This resource has enabled numerous researchers to advance our understanding of learning and development. Dr. Booth completed his PhD in psychology at the University of Maryland, College Park, and his postdoc at Carnegie Mellon.
And finally, I'm going to introduce Yamin Lee. Yamin Lee is a PhD student in computer science at Vanderbilt University's Neuroimaging and Brain Dynamics Lab. She developed Neurobolt, an innovative transformer model that translates EEG data into fMRI bolt signals, with findings presented at NeurIPS 2024. Her commitment to open science is demonstrated through publicly available code repositories and detailed documentation that enable other researchers to build upon her work. Her research applies deep learning to neural decoding and EEG fMRI translation. She holds a BE in biomedical engineering from Jiaotong University and a master's in science in biomedical engineering from Shanghai Jiaotong University.
With that, we will move on to our questions. We have prepared fantastic questions, and I'm very excited to hear the answers for all of these questions. Just a quick check, can you guys hear us well in the room? Is your microphone there? Can I get a thumbs up from someone in the room? Raise your hands in the room if you can hear me, everybody. Okay, I guess people are having trouble hearing us. Okay, can you just pass the YouTube link so people can join?
There may be a delay.
Okay, I see. There's definitely a delay. Okay, I see hands up. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Sounds great. I knew there's 12 seconds delay, but yes, okay, great. Without further ado, our first question is, what does open science, neuroscience, combination of those two, mean to you personally and professionally? Why do you believe it's important? This question is directed to Dr. Peters, Dr. Heuer, and Yamin. So let's start with Dr. Peters. Please take it away.
Yeah, great. So as the first person on this panel also to speak, I want to thank the organizers very much for bringing us together. I think that this is going to be fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to both this discussion, but also the conversation that we'll have in the Discord channel during this period and afterwards as well. So please do submit your questions. We're really excited to hear from you as the audience as well, in addition to the prepared questions that we have here. So thanks again for having me. So what does open science mean to me? So of course, everyone's going to answer this question a little bit differently, but I think a lot of the themes that we'll touch on will be about transparency and accountability, reproducibility, those kinds of things. So of course, those are the primary goals here of open science. But I also want to make sure that in my answer, I also highlight the pros and the value of collaboration and efficiency. So this idea that if you build tools that are open and that are available for others, it's not just that you're building this and you're putting it out into the world and it's lovely and wonderful that other people will be able to use these data or these tools or these techniques, but it will also make you more collaborative because you will have the opportunity to engage with that community more. It'll make you and your team and the science that you do personally more efficient. So you can more easily bring on, say, research assistants or short-term people who are able to really jump in feet first, just like do it from the get-go. It's really easy to build these data sets and these tools. It's really easy to make progress on them if you have this kind of foundation of collaborative effort. And so that collective effort, from my perspective, and the open science components, both in my own research and in building NeuroMatch, that collaboration is so powerful. It builds this human connection that drives your science forward in a way that encourages different perspectives and different contributions that you don't get if you're like working in your little silo and the only person who can see and understand your code is you, right? So I think that in addition to the very societal level, ontologically correct things that we should be doing, right? Like this is what we should be doing as science, is sharing our science with the community. But there's so much benefit also in highlighting the collaborative effort and the collective effort components of open science. It will make you a better scientist. People will find little bugs and that kind of thing. So that's what open science means to me, is not just sharing for the sake of others, but sharing also because it's more fun that way, and you end up building your science community in a really powerful way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, we'll go with Yamin.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I'm the most junior person here, so I'm mostly here to learn about like all these great people's idea, and kind of very happy to join the discussion. So regarding to this question, I think personally, open science or open neuroscience, it represents a commitment to sharing knowledge and tools that can help each other to reproduce and build their research upon our work, and help them to tackle complex challenges together in the field, while also enable me to like learn and grow through this kind of like collaboration process. And professionally, I think it is also a way to ensure that my work or our work has a broader impact by being more accessible and reproducible, and ultimately can contribute to the collaborative progress of the field. And I believe it is important because it just ensures the transparency, reproducibility, and as mentioned, like facilitate collaboration within the entire community. And when the research is open, people can just easily trust and confidently build their work upon it, and accelerate the innovation and reducing the redundant efforts. And yeah, this is especially crucial in the field like neuroscience. I think we're solving this fundamental questions requires the collective effort and resources of a global research community. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yamin. And last but not least, Dr. Heuer, please.
I agree with so many points that you already mentioned. So, like, yes, open science should just be called science. It's fundamental for making our scientific results reproducible. And in many cases, it's the only way to achieve sufficient statistical power. And so biology, and especially neuroscience, are much more messy and variable than what we used to think. And so the collection of large enough samples is often impossible unless we collaborate. And it's also just so nice. And so we need to think about our own scientific results as part of a bigger picture. And so it has to be possible for others to use them and to reproduce them and to extend them. And so open science is not just a thing to do, it's like a scientific necessity. And yeah, so open science means making all the steps of the science open and transparent. So from like coming up with a question and collecting and analyzing the data, and like to the publishing of the results. And so no single step of all of these should be closed. And in particular, our careers should not depend on making any particular step unnecessarily closed, like be it publishing in fancy journals or anything, like keeping data for ourselves or something. And so open science makes so many different great resources available to everyone. So including many of the things that were already mentioned, like surrounding yourself with these fantastic people to work with and learn from and be advised by, and all these enriching collaborations where you get to discuss and arrive at questions that you wouldn't have run into and tackled yourself. And also including data samples that allow you to make hopefully generalizable discoveries about brain structure and function, and including the code and even entire analysis pipelines that will be openly available on GitHub, and in this spirit of transparency and aiming at reproducible research results. But also, of course, like this great aspect of making resources available to anyone and everyone, the entire community, no matter if you're from a small lab or a big lab, and wherever in the world, that everybody can perform the research questions or answer the questions that they are interested in with great data. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. Yeah, and I, personally, I resonate a lot with that, just like the power of kind of collaborating with others, and how, open science should just be considered science, because at the end of the day, like this is one of the only ways through like big data sets and sharing that you can actually, achieve statistical significance. So I really resonate with a lot of that. So the next set of questions that we're going to ask are going to be specifically concerned about research and how open science has impacted your research career specifically. And so this next question will be directed towards Dr. Lecoq and Dr. Wagner. So first, can you share an example of how open neuroscience practices have advanced your research or your field? Dr. Lecoq, we'd like to begin with you.
So I'm at the Allen Institute. We've led a very collaborative effort to collect data set on the cortical processing, and from the get-go, we embrace essentially sharing the data before we even publish our own analysis of it. So that resulted in probably a little more than 10 data releases from us on in vivo neuronal activity. There are other platforms, of course, at the Allen Institute that have released data, but I'm going to speak of this one because I'm particularly knowledgeable about it. And we've monitored how the community has leveraged this data set. And I think we've already exceeded 100 publications on this. And so this really sort of show the power of creating, I think, share data assets that consolidate the community around a couple of shared resources and facilitate exploration by students across the world on the same data set and sort of really open the door for attacking their hard problem of neuroscience. And so I think that's a really wonderful examples of pushing that approach.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Dr. Wagner, would you like to share an example of how open neuroscience has advanced your research or field?
I can share a similar, albeit smaller, data story from the lab that I worked in, and it started really simple with very, plain ideas. Somebody thought, it used to be my former PI, oh well, would be an interesting data set to acquire, and he did that in 2014. When I was still actually just about starting with my psychology bachelor's, unbeknown to neuroscience at all. But there were people way earlier than my career who said, okay, I'm going to acquire data. And they said, we're going to do that in an open fashion. Let's see what comes out of it. Really open. We have the funds. Why not make this an open data set? And at that time, there were not so many open data sets back in the 2010s. Still lots of open data, but not comparable. And back when I joined the lab many years later, this data set had already grown, not only by the original lab, but by other labs contributing data sets in the same fashion on the same resource. That specific data set was movie watching, and people from all over the world added that specific movie watching fMRI data set in their mother tongues with different native speakers. Plenty of PhD students added annotations for that resource so that you could have speech or visual annotations of that data set. And I have contributed, never with fMRI scanning, but still I know that data set very, very well, just from being able to contribute although never having, never being the PI that actually assessed that. And I think being able to do that, contributing to that kind of resource, like all the other panelists have already mentioned, that makes this resource better and better every year. And it's cool to see what other fields also contribute to that, because we know that this data set is not only used in neuroscience, but because it is open, because it has acquired so much data, it is used by physicists. It is used by medical people. It is used in contexts and scopes that were never imagined when this data set was first acquired. And that's a beautiful thing to see.
Thank you so much for that answer. I'll move to the next question. It is related. What are the main barriers to implementing open science practices in your field of research, and how we might address these challenges? I'll direct this question to both Dr. Booth and Peters, but let's start with Dr. Booth. Take it away.
Thanks for having me. So yeah, I guess the barrier that I'd like to highlight is one kind of my experience here at Vanderbilt, it seems as though some of the institutional structures here at Vanderbilt and probably many universities don't prioritize open science. So I think really what needs to be done is, kind of like administrators need to emphasize the value in open science and reward faculty for adhering to open science practices. I often get a misconception by other faculty and administrators who are kind of less familiar with open science. And one of the misconceptions is that it's really rigid, like you can only do certain things, and you can't explore your data, for example. So they have this kind of, I guess, incorrect perception of open science. So I think it's really important for all of us and other faculty at universities or institutes or whatever, educate their colleagues about A, the value of open science, but B, it isn't rigid, right? It's actually just about transparency. That's it. You just need to, tell people, all the steps you did and don't leave steps out. And kind of report everything so people can evaluate your science. So I guess that's what I'd like to highlight.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to add to that a little bit, given BrainHack is really here for that, to bring open science, to talk about it, to bring that to this campus and the students and the faculty including, because not every faculty is aware or want to practice or don't even know sometimes what that means. So like bringing this event here and hoping to advertise it for not just, this is not just for students, this is for everyone from every career stage, every department. You don't have to be a neuroscience person or computer science person to join this event. And really, that's what we are trying to emphasize. And like, I really love how much enthusiasm we get, how many people are interested in this. And we always hear so fantastic things right after every session. This was great. We learned a lot. And we really try to emphasize, if you're pitching a project, we want the data to be open. And we got questions, how do I open my data? We walked them through OSF and they created OSF links. We wanted them to create GitHub repos for their projects and they created GitHub projects. We helped them creating their first time ever README files and things like that. So I think it is definitely great if faculty can step in. Administrators probably will not even, we won't be maybe super familiar about open science, but I think it's a grassroots project. It's a grassroots movement, and we are all responsible, from the most junior students to the most senior person. And so just kind of wanted to also plug in, we are all here to raise awareness and bring this together and kind of push forward and make it not open science, but actually what science is. So kind of that is my plug. And so Dr. Peters, if you would like to answer the same question, please take it away.
Yeah, sure. I very so much agree with everything that has been said so far. And I think that this, what we've highlighted in the answer to this specific question is it's not just that there's a lack of awareness of what open science is or what it means and how rigid or not it is, but also there's a lack of accommodation within traditional incentive structures for valuing open science effort. And so, when you apply to a faculty position or postdoctoral position, when you go up for tenure or promotion, those kinds of things, like which box does this go in the kind of bean counting scheme of how many papers, how many grants, how many this and that, where does open science fall? It's a new-ish initiative. It doesn't fit easily within the rigid incentive structures that we've set out for ourselves in academia. And that makes it really hard to recognize the value of that effort in these traditional structures, and therefore it suppresses the enthusiasm and the motivation for engaging in open science practices because you only have so much time. So it's, do you do the things that allow you to make a nice little list on your CV or on the little form that you have to fill out in order to be eligible for that job? Or do you contribute to this bigger thing that we all know is powerful and good and how science should be done, and yet doesn't nicely fit into these structures? So I think that that's a huge component that is practical and sociological in nature, that this is not just about raising awareness for the flexibility and practices of open science, but also the real need for a push on the value of engaging in it. And relatedly, for a real push on the recognizing the value of the effort and the amount of effort that is required to do this well. Because open science is not just, I collected this data set, I'm just going to put it on some repository, like done, great, moving on with my life. To make it truly accessible, findable, interoperable, all the FAIR principles, right, requires a huge effort. That effort takes time and it takes specialized knowledge. And so to push for this to become standard practice, we need to recognize that not every PI in every lab has the correct skill set to do that. They may not have the manpower, person power to actually accomplish that goal. And so then it becomes, oh, I shared my GitHub repo with the world, but it's not actually usable. Or I shared my data set with the world by dumping it on a repository, but I didn't get the metadata structure right, so it doesn't actually become usable to others. So I wanted here to mention that Marianne Martone has a really nice piece in The Transmitter about a year ago, I think, about specifically this component where we need to recognize the effort, recognize the specialized skill sets that are necessary to engage in open science in this way. And then build structures that allow some of that effort to be offloaded from the PI and local lab, because that will actually encourage people to do this more. If it's not like, oh, now I need to learn how to use GitHub properly. And, I never really did that. I always just built my code in my little, local directory or something, because there are a lot of people who do that. So, and they're not wrong for doing science that way. It's just not within the scope of making it findable and interoperable and so on. So I think that the sociological barriers are massive, and we need to continue pushing on that. This includes incentive structures within academia and in industry, but it also just includes recognition that we need to build better systems to support this. And then the last thing I'll say is that in terms of other practical barriers, doing open science is not only hard, requires specialized skills, takes time, but there are components of it that are particularly time consuming. Like, for example, registered reports, as opposed to just kind of a standard pre-registration. So a registered report is different, for those of you who don't know, in that you kind of write up the introduction and methods for your project as you would for a pre-registration, but then you send it to a journal and it gets peer reviewed. And the goal is that after it goes through peer review at the intro and methods stage, then that's locked, and then you just go collect the data. So it's like a very kind of, it's like a pre-registration on steroids, basically. But think about how long it takes for a paper to get reviewed. So if it goes through multiple rounds of review, now you're at 6 months if you're lucky. And so when we think about grant timelines and timelines for finishing degrees and so on, recognizing the toll that this time takes and trying to find better ways to balance the value of registered reports with maybe the slightly less rigorous pre-registrations in different platforms, and recognizing that in a perfect world, sure, everything would be a registered report of some kind or pre-registered. Sometimes if you have a grant that's, got a 3-year timeline, that's just not possible. You can't just sit on your hands and wait for the review process to go before you can actually collect the data. So there are these practical barriers and there are these sociological barriers that have to do with recognizing the effort and also just actually engaging in it. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can I add one more thing to that too? I know this is a long answer, but this is, there's also a barrier in credit assignment. So once you've kind of created the data set or the registered report, whatever, you've put it out into the world, how is it that credit gets gets the credit that you deserve for that effort, not just in tenure and promotion, but in authorship of later things, because still authorship is the currency in our world. And so I think that there are changes sociologically that we also need to make in understanding that we shouldn't count just authorships. We should not just count first and last authorship, and everybody in between is like someone who kind of did something on the project. So I did write a piece in the Transmitter about this problem as well, credit assignment in the sciences as we go towards open, big collaborative science, and how we need to push on that too.
Yeah, thank you so much for both of your answers. Yeah, and I learned so much just from listening to that by itself, because I mean, I'm just an undergrad, so like I think a lot of this stuff that's like being, said is something that I'll definitely keep in mind, as I progress, into my research career in the future. So my next question is directed for Dr. Lecoq and Dr. Heuer. And so what research questions interest you the most, and how can collaborative and open science approaches help address these questions? I'll start with Dr. Lecoq.
All right. So I've been leading a platform called Open School that is aiming at essentially facilitating this open source practices across the community. So we receive projects from and booths are initially blinded, and we receive projects from community and labs across the world, and then execute the experiment at the Allen Institute and release the data to the community in open source forms. And so as part of this process, we tackle a lot of interesting questions. And last year, we started to try something completely new, which is to try to integrate the community together around one central question. And I believe this is incredibly important, because neuroscience is an organ that do integrations. It's meant to integrate senses. And so we have to team up to gather insight and knowledge about different senses and how they work together to create predictions about the world. And so we started a predictive processing project that is about understanding how the brain, or the cortex in particular, might be doing predictions about the next seconds of activity. How does it understand the world in the next seconds? And we push it out to the world and say, like, who wants to work with us on that? And so then it has been, I think, so far a success. There has been a little more than 50 people collaborating. So we first made a review of the field. This document is online. It's a little longer than 100 pages at this point. The review is finished. And now we are designing experiments that are tackling important questions that help move the field forward on this problem. I'm going to post a link on Discord. Actually, it's an open end. Some of the students or anyone in the audience can join us and help us. So that experiment will be conducted at the Allen Institute this year. It's already funded. And we release the data to the community and then do the analysis together. And so it's the intent here is really to push the barrier. Like, do we need to have the experiment designed behind closed door between the students and a professor, or a postdoc and a professor? Can we bring the whole expertise to the table of the community, the experts in the field, and have the student join in and poke about problems and try to sort of design the experiment together? I think, in my opinion, this is going to transform neuroscience in very deep ways, this approach. I think this is what the field needs. It's my opinion. And so we're doing it.
That's awesome. How about you, Dr. Heuer?
For this one, I got so excited. I have a little slide that I would like to share, if I may.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. So do you see my screen?
Yes.
I'm particularly interested in brain development and brain evolution. And so on the one hand, that makes a lot of kind of unusual data sets, like a rhinoceros brain or a giraffe. And usually like unusual in a sense that common methods for segmentation, for example, fail. And so we do a lot of work semi-automatically, and for most of the segmentation manually, actually. And for this, it's essential to collaborate, and in this way, transforming a task that would like be too large and time consuming for one lab into a collaborative task that would be a common effort. And so it's nice and fun to segment together. Here you can see our tool BrainBox. We've built special tools for real-time collaboration segmentation. For example, BrainBox, what you can see here for working on MRI data, and then also MicroJaw for working on high-resolution histological data set. And so we can invite people to join our projects via social media platforms. We've done that in the past. And so some of my co-authors I've actually never met in person yet. And it's just an amazing community that you get to know in this way. And here's, for example, like a surface reconstruction we did. And this is MicroJaw for histology data. And a second aspect is not only like this unusual data, but that for these evolutionary analyses, I use phylogenetic comparative methods to analyze these data and trace the evolutionary history of phenotypes back to the common ancestor of all the species I investigate. And for these analyses, the more species that you can include, the better. And so open data and semi-open data that you can obtain through collaborations are again at the heart of my work. And it's also just so much more fun to work together. And some of the students joined my segmentation efforts because they thought like, whoa, that data was so cool. And then they stayed because they just enjoy doing these manual segmentations a lot. And so they still work with me. And in the manuscript, I have collaborators that I've never met. And then at some point in conferences, I will bump into them for the first time. That's always such a pleasure. Yeah, thank you. That's basically my research questions.
Fantastic. Thank you sharing your screen. It was amazing. And it's a very unique panel style too. I love that. Thank you for bringing that in. Next set of questions will be about career journey. And my first question is to Dr. Wagner. What career opportunities have emerged specifically because of your involvement in open science, open neuroscience?
So absolutely everyone, I would say, and including the job that I have now chosen to do, which at least to me is a absolutely dream career opportunity. It surely does not work for everyone, but I've always dreamed of the forever postdoc, where you're shielded from the kind of administrative burden of becoming a PI, and having to deal with yeah, I'm sure you know best what part of your day you dread the most. But nevertheless, being able to do the science and the scientific work, specifically in software and data management, that I absolutely enjoy most, or also the teaching and the working together with people collaboratively, and all of that emerged essentially because I at one point was a naive psychology student, not knowing anything, having a Windows computer and not being into technical stuff much, and then at some point you start in neuroscience. It was for me while I was doing my master's, and suddenly you're faced with this extremely surprisingly technical field where you have to learn all of these tools, all of these skills. And I was as lost as lots of people are probably in this interdisciplinary field. And I was lucky to have great mentors that encouraged me to simply do everything I did openly. And I essentially did my learning journey open. Whatever I learned, I translated it into teaching materials, into documentation for software, into materials, resources for papers I wrote that would teach people how to do things that were done in the paper. And all of that was useful. The most useful contributions I have done to science, I would say, are not scientific papers. They are just random educational resources that are freely accessible. And I know that sometimes people read them and sometimes they reach out and say, hey, that was helpful, that taught me a skill. And I don't think my scientific contributions will ever reach that level of importance. And that's not to devalue any scientific contributions. So, and that I was lucky, I was able to learn how to write software. I was able to find a great team with awesome human beings that value open collaboration, free software as much as I do. And then somebody gave me a permanent job where I can continue doing that, specifically just because I enjoyed the stuff that I did. And, you know, that certainly is luck. Every career path in science is luck. But if there's a message I can send out there, then, you know, if you enjoy doing, do it. Definitely do it. You never know what lies ahead. Break the rules. You don't need to break yourself to strive after a career that will wreck you in the end. So if you see a chance, take it, and it might pay out in the end.
Yeah, thank you so much for the very inspiring advice. So my next question will be directed to both Dr. Peters and Dr. Booth. So what role has open neuroscience played in building your professional growth? We will start with Dr. Peters.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Of course, the first thing that I have to mention here is NeuroMatch, which we started 5 years ago. And it was meant to be, oh, let's just, you know, make a little summer school and put it online. How much work can that be? That's like the inside joke, is how much work can it be? Or it won't be much work. Turns out it's a lot of work. But through that initiative, first of all, it kept me sane during the pandemic. So I think that is a very valuable thing. And I came to be very close friends with a lot of people that I didn't meet in 3 dimensions for several years. But it also, it changed the way that I perceive doing this kind of open science in my own lab as well. So the value of finding people who value the same things that you do, who will engage with science the same way you do, who have complementary perspectives. This doesn't mean you always agree, but it's that you are all coming at it from the same kind of foundation is really important. And so in building my professional growth, I think that in a lot of ways, people have heard of what I do and of, you know, me because of my involvement with NeuroMatch, not because of my actual like scientific contributions necessarily. And so that has certainly opened doors and given me space to talk on panels like this that I don't know that I would necessarily be able to do otherwise. So now what NeuroMatch is doing is we don't just have, you know, the 4 courses that we've now built, Comp Neuro, Deep Learning, Neuro AI, and Climate Science. But we also have this Impact Scholars Initiative where we have mentored projects that persist throughout the year that you can do with a mentor who is dedicated to that. They end in micro publications. We have now this new initiative where we are pairing artificial intelligence researchers with mental health folks and folks who researchers and those who have lived experiences. So forgive the advertising pitch for a second. It's really changed the way that I do science. Being part of NeuroMatch and being engaged with that community has exposed me to so many ways that people get excited about doing collaborative science and the extreme value of giving them the tools to do that, teaching other people, teaching the next generation to engage with this space. So I do also do open science in my real job. And so, you know, as part of 2 projects we have from the Templeton World Charity Foundation, which are called adversarial collaborations, we have to, and we want to engage in these they're big collaborations. There are at least 6 PIs in each grant. Each one has their own lab. And so we have a lot of simultaneous replication and open science practices that are baked into the projects. And through that has also, because it's baked into the project from the very beginning, that has changed the way I think about engaging with these large collaborative spaces, managing teams, that kind of thing. So being a PI and being, you know, doing the admin, it's not all bad, but I don't do as much science as I used to, for sure. But I think that there is value in how I've learned to grow into this kind of larger, like see the forest, not the trees perspective. Not that the trees are bad. Someone's got to look at that. But it's changed, I think, my respect for the different kinds of roles that people can have in doing science too, and the necessity of having all of those there. So I think those are probably what I want to say. Being part of those collaborative efforts, the adversarial collaborations, has also led me to launch the Generative Adversarial Collaboration Project at the Cognitive and Computational Neuroscience Conference. So the emphasis there is on finding people who have opposing views and like basically having them decide that they're going to talk to each other to make progress. And there we emphasize not the outcome. Don't design an experiment and figure out who's right and somebody loses, but we emphasize the process. And so we have this goal of having the community engage with the conversation and then having a piece that describes that engagement so that it's not just a basic science outcome that's valuable. It's also seeing the process and refining the process of doing science in a global community where we are no longer constrained by who happens to have the office next to you. So that, I think, like all of those activities have changed who I am as a scientist and the way that I engage in science in both my own research group and in this broader global community.
Yeah, that's so cool that I mean, I knew about Neuromatch for I've known about it for I think 4 years now, and it's like where I learned a lot of the techniques that I use nowadays for my research. And whenever my friends also ask me like, is there a resource that I can use online to like learn computational neuroscience or like deep learning or machine learning or things like that, I point them to Neuromatch Academy because it's it's so there's so much stuff on there and it's so well documented. And yeah, I think that the whole conversation of the opposing points of view, that whole initiative that you started at the conference is, I've never heard about something like that before. And so yeah, that's really, really cool.
I have to say, I am not the only person who built Neuromatch. It was a massive,
Right.
massive collaborative effort, and I had this like little role over here in the corner. So, sure, there are things that for every single person who helped Neuromatch, it would not have happened without that person. And there was just a huge amount of collective effort, and I'm just grateful to have played a small role in it. Yeah.
I just want to also do a brain hack plug. If you visit our website and find the educational section, and you will see different sections. First of all, we wanted to share every workshop that is happening here and the global brain hack. But in addition to those things, we also shared community resources, and Neuromatch is one of them. So we are trying to build this single page with lots of information, helpful information, and I would love to get emails from you if you wanted to put something on here. I'm happy to put all that. We have the Turing Map, we have community events highlighted, ReproHack and BrainHack, and we also did a lab spotlight who are doing a really good job on open reproducible science. And I unfortunately didn't get a chance to do a whole research on like build this page, but my goal is make it a really large, inclusive page where people can find the resources that we use day to day and that they can leverage that. So that's my plug to this conversation. Thank you.
Dr. Booth, can you also share the role that Open Neuroscience was played in building your professional growth?
Sure. Yeah, maybe I'll highlight two things. One is, I guess, pre-registering your question and hypotheses up front, whether it's in a pre-registration or registered report. That's been pretty fundamental in terms of reorganizing how my lab does work. So there's a ton more like back and forth conversation, talking about ideas early on in a project. So, what approach do we want to take? How do we want to answer the data? Being very explicit in our, analytical approach. And that's really encouraged lots of conversation between me and other people in the lab and also between members in the lab. So that's been really nice, actually, over the last few years to kind of see that happen. The other, I guess, main thing is sharing data. So I've shared a bunch of data. A while ago, I got an RO3 to share some data, but then kind of got addicted to it and then shared all of our data, basically. It gets easier, actually. It definitely gets easier. So yeah, somebody mentioned that there's a big upfront cost. There is, for sure. But the more you do it, the easier it gets, and it just becomes automatic, and it actually improves your work at the front end and actually saves time at the back end because you're not trying to recreate things that you forget how you did it, long ago. So sharing data has, been fundamental because it actually, you should actually, you should actually have a plan before you start collecting data, how you share your data, right? So it actually influences how you collect data, how you organize data on the front end if you have a plan for sharing data. Fortunately, now there are like methods or portals to do that. I do most of my stuff on Open Neuro. They use bids, so it's it's like, okay, there's a little recipe we can follow, which is really nice. So now all of our projects are kind of organized in that way. So people have like, I'm not going to lie, I wish more people were like downloading our data and writing up publications on our data, but it's starting to happen more, which is nice to see. There's about maybe a dozen papers or so that have used our data in the last few years. It's been great. I mean, some of the folks just contact me and they have questions about the data, and I try to answer them and actually try to clarify it on Open Neuro. So that's been an educational process. Other folks, just publish the work, and I'm like, wow, you did a cool thing. I wish I had thought of that. And then other folks have actually contacted me and, asked me to be involved, in the project. So, maybe I'm a co-author or, whatever. So that's been really fun to kind of see that. And I'm hoping that, it'll get more kind of attention as the field progresses.
Thank you. Our next question is, how did you initially transition into practicing open neuroscience, and what impact did it have on your career path? Yamin, I'll direct this question to Yamin and Dr. Heuer. Let's start with Yamin.
Yeah, sure. I would like to share one thing. So, actually, when I began my PhD study, I was kind of like transitioning my research focus from pure neuroimaging to deep learning. So, as most of you might already know, I think deep learning field strongly encouraged the open science, and which is, I think, I believe it's the key reason why it has develop so fast and become so impactful. So early on, I came across several very impressive deep learning repos, and some of which also use some like neuroimaging data. And this repo has super clear instructions on how to run the code, making everything transparent, which is super helpful for a new PhD student. And it was truly like mind-blowing to see like how easily I could replicate their results by following their documentation. And also when I attend this kind of like deep learning conference, I found like everybody I met there was so generous to share their thoughts and resources like code and data set, which is super impressive. And this kind of like motivated me to do the same thing in my own research. And yeah, this experience became the major motivation for me to practice open science, and because I understand how frustrating it can be to try to reproduce the result by only relying on the information provided in a paper. And I've also seen some very awful GitHub repo as well. So I know how painful it is to build your own work upon this work. So the clarity of accessibility of this good repo just made me realize the great value of open science. And as a student, I'm now still at the beginning of my career journey, but I think practicing this open science already has a very significant impact on my own growth. So, for example, engaging this open practice has helped me develop essential skills like coding, managing the repositories, and also collaborating on like shared platforms like GitHub. And I believe the skills and values were like incredibly beneficial when I begin my job hunting, and also as they demonstrate my ability to contribute to the team-oriented, open, and innovative research environment. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yamin. She has a workshop later today, how to get started with latest machine learning approaches, and she will show us what a terrible GitHub repo looks like and then what a great GitHub repo looks like. So please tune in for that. But yeah, next, Dr. Heuer, would you like to take a step at the same question?
Thank you. I'm super lucky. So open science is basically the way I experienced how to do science right from the start. And like the first meeting before I even started my PhD was a BrainHack in Paris back then, where I met so many amazing people and the spirit of working open and together to understand more and more of the brain. And that included everyone, like from the students, the postdocs, the PIs of big world-renowned labs, and everybody together was discussing, aware of the reproducible issues and aiming at like big shared cohorts of data and sharing code and entire analysis pipelines alongside it. And so I was super lucky that that was like, for me, open science, just science right there, and the way I've always known it, and by all the people around me. And this was wonderful as a community because I have a background in fine arts, like I'm an artist. And so the artist that I was back then, it was just so nice to have this wonderful community to welcome me into a world that was super new to me and very unknown, and getting me started in studying the brain. And because that was so nice, I've organized many brain hacks over the years myself, and like including the OHBAIM hackathon in Rome that we did with Roberto Toro back then in 2019. It was also super nice, inviting everybody basically over the years to join and experience the spirit of this community. And then later, I've also, like during my PhD, also quite early on, I've joined other initiatives like the Mozilla Open Science Leadership Program as a mentor, and then the eLife Open Innovators Program. So if there's things like that you see out there, it's nice because that also gives you an additional view and experience open science across all sorts of disciplines from different angles, which was great. And in terms of my career, there's beautiful examples, like to mention two of them. When the community saw my first primate data set, there was 34 different primate species. And to me, this neuroanatomical diversity was all new. And then experts in the field who had worked with macaques for years, they saw my figure with all these brains, and they told me that my crab-eating macaque and my rhesus macaque specimens are probably not the most representatives for their species. And they shared so many data sets with me so that I could improve my data set. And when I suggested it, they also made them available to the entire community. So big shout out to Andrew Puczynski and Spencer Arbuckle, and of course, Mike Milham and the crowd around BrainDE. And another beautiful experience was the people that replied to my tweets. It was Twitter back then, and I just said, like, this is microscopy data across 56 mammals. Who would like to join me in segmenting this? And or the primate data set in MRI on BrainBox. And then they became dear friends and collaborators over the years. So mentioning a few: Farouk Gulban, Faizeh Alavi, Alexandra de Sousa, Sophie Falk, Neville Magiese, like beautiful people that I haven't met before, that we met on those tools online, and that, yeah. Open science.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. So our next few questions are going to be about team building and management. And so this question will be directed to Dr. Wagner. How do you teach your team about the benefits and importance of open science practices?
So I will start by outlining where I work. It's a large institute, very multidisciplinary. We have around 100 people spread over, I think, almost a dozen research groups, and a wide variety of topics that are addressed. And I'm in a unique position because I'm working as a coordinator for research software engineering and research data management, among others, for the entire institute. And that helps to get a hold of lots of people. And I also interact very closely with the groups that provide the software solutions that our institute itself uses and the infrastructure that keeps our science running. So I would say that's a very cool position to be in, because that connects you with lots of people. And that gives us the opportunity in this institute so first of all, maybe I should credit the superiors in the institute. All of that would not be possible with that ease, I would say, if not for our institute head, Simon Eickhoff, to be extremely, extremely empowering on the open science topics, fully behind everyone, supporting that wholeheartedly. And if the superiors provide that level of support, then you don't have to, wiggle your way through the cracks. It's possible. It's still fun. We've done that in many other communities and many other institutes, but it does make a difference if you have the institute head all committed, all in on open science. And then what we do is essentially we just like Katja said, when we introduce a new PhD student or even a new group leader to the institute, then the open science is the science that is normal. the tools that we use, they are open. And if somebody has never coded before, then they'll experience these tools as the default. If somebody has experience in, let's say, closed source languages or proprietary tools, then we have the opportunity to show them how it's actually easier to work with open tools, or at least, after you've had enough contact points with them and a supporting community. And by throwing people into cold water, so to say, with a helping hand, with guidance, but still putting them out there into the open science world right away, that creates a mentality that I think persists throughout careers. If somebody starts a PhD or their research group there, that's an experience working with open data, open tools that will last through the next career stages. Yes, that's, I would say, a good overview of how we work.
Thank you so much. I want to remind our attendees, please, if you have any questions, post into this channel. We are happy to direct them on the live chat, but you're welcome to also post them, and hopefully our career panelists will have time to answer them sometime. And so the next question is going to be in the category of career advice and future career landscape. And I'll direct this first one to Dr. Lecoq. What common career mistakes do you see if science is not open, and how can they be avoided?
All right, I'm unfortunately old enough to remember how the field was 20 years ago. And I think neuroscience has is fantastic progress in open science. Like when I started bioRxiv, didn't exist, and so you would essentially wait years before knowing the results of your colleague next door. and so we've made a ton of progress. We're sharing tools, we're sharing data very quickly, and I think the culture of open science is sort of taking roots in your science, and that's really good. I still see still today fears of scooping or things like that. So like when a student start when a group start a project, I think the barrier to open science are often that, like, it's because there's a conflict here, right? You put so much work into an experiment and design and acquiring the data, and you want to be the first to publish that work and be recognized for it. But and I think that's in contradiction with open science. We call it science in the open. It's just really doing this openly, fluidly. And I think still today, many students or postdoc or PI might be concerned about being scooped on their result. And I think that's a mistake, because what eventually happened is that every study is slightly different. You're always going to have a unique character of your work, and actually happened to me where as a student I was worried about being scooped. We actually end up having a competitive publication on similarly the same topic, and we both managed to publish without issues. And so and we had different flavors on the question. So and eventually I think it benefited the community. And so I feel like so that feeling of being worried about being the first and eventually ended up not being worth it. And so I think it's a mistake to fear scooping, because it prevents you from sharing very openly your work and also getting feedback, and really important feedback. And so I think as an advice to younger generations, I would think twice about putting too much protections on your work, and bring people in as much as you can, because then you benefit from having the additional expertise, you benefit from having the positive or negative feedback early on and avoid mistakes. And then if someone is doing the same thing as you, just team up. Try to find a way to make something together, or like attack competitive angles, and then if it's really important questions, you should be able to find common ground. And so I think that would be my I think that would be my hope for where the field moves forward, is that we feel less and less scooping. I think that would be better for the people, and then that would make for better science.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, just words of wisdom about scooping. And I think this is a very common fear, at least in the labs and some of the other labs that I've been a part of, just like this fear of scooping. And I think just the message that you iterated there was very, very important. And I hope that everyone can really take that away. So my next question is directed to Dr. Booth. What advice would you give to early career researchers interested in building a career?
Yeah, I'd like to also emphasize this fear, the fear of scooping. Yeah, it seems to be widespread. I just typed it into Google and it gave me quite a AI generative gave me quite a good answer. Like a lot of people are afraid, but shouldn't be. So yeah, it's interesting. Advice. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say embrace it. I guess I kind of like, maybe about I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, I was following all this stuff on social media about the replicability crisis and all of that, and I wasn't really doing much open science at all. And then, yeah, really made the transition. And yeah, it's really benefited my lab for sure. But I think, the students have really benefited as well. So, we get like journal reviews from our papers, and we basically pre-register all of our studies now. Maybe a small number we don't, which is fine. I mean, you can have a variable approach. I'm not like, I don't have a hammer over everybody's head, right? And yeah, invariably I get for all the pre-registered studies, I mean, the reviews are like, this is great, it's pre-registered. That's the first thing they say. So that also allows you to probably publish null results more, which is also wonderful because null results are as important as positive results, right? You need both to move the field forward for sure. So yeah, if you embrace it, then it's going to show hopefully rewards. I mean, one is, better outcomes in terms of your published work. The other is, I think, probably easier to get a job now. I've had, since, I've kind of embraced open science, I've had maybe 3, 4 folks go out and get faculty positions, and uniformly their approach is embraced by the places they're visiting. So, I mean, it's really, I mean, they get that. I mean, they feel that when they go to these visits, give talks, go on the interview, they feel that people are positive, toward that approach. So yeah, it'll benefit your publication career. It'll also benefit your career prospects.
Thank you so much, Dr. Booth. So in the last 6 minutes, I want to give every panelist 1 minute to wrap up this panel. If there's anything you want to say, if there's any questions we didn't pose, but you still want to answer that question, please go ahead and use that minute. So I'm going to go from the top of my screen. So it is Dr. Lecoq. Let's start with you, please.
Oh, I would just say, try to make the field you like it to be. You hone it as everyone, and so it's a scientific culture, and we hone it together. And so I think the practices we follow will establish it. And so everybody weighs in. And so as you consider your future, yeah, just follow the practice you want the field to go, and that will happen.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner.
That was wonderful advice. I would add, there are lots of ways to stay in science. If you want to stay in science without being on this very narrow defined career ladder. Oftentimes these career paths aren't really clear and they will come to you by chance, but there are real opportunities out there and it might be one for you. It might be in the form of research software engineering. It might be coming in a post that has a certain role assigned to it and you will fill it in the way that you actually like to fill the role, even if it doesn't really have to do with that job description. It can be in research data management, such as research data stewardship. Science is a beautiful place to be. It's a privileged position to be working in, I feel. And don't get discouraged if, at some point you realize PI is out of reach or not my thing, because you can stay if you want to, oftentimes.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Heuer?
These were beautiful words. Like, I don't really know what to add. I think it's just like, as long as you enjoy what you do, this kind of automatically happens. And it just makes your own lab so much larger when you embrace open science. It's like out of a sudden you have neighbors that not only sit next to you, but they sit on the other end of the world, but you still like, they feel like so close. And you have like such rich scientific environment by embracing that. So it's just so much fun on so many different angles. Enjoy.
Thank you. Dr. Booth?
Oh, I'd just like to conclude by saying, I think we should all be really excited about the future. I'm particularly excited about these, the kind of huge data sets and data sharing. I'm really interested in individual differences. I think a lot of people are. I see a change in the field, like a lot of students and faculty are, tapping into these data sets and doing projects on them. And, it's not as though you need to collect all your own data nowadays. It's totally acceptable to just look out there and see what data is available. And, based on your question, maybe it's well answered by something that's out there. So that just seems like saves money and it also hastens discovery. So yeah, I'm just really excited about the future.
Thanks so much. Yamin, do you want to go next?
I think I don't have much thing to add on, but I feel like as a PhD student, I'm still like practicing open science, and I actually just like I would recommend my PhD friend, or who wants to work either in like academia industry, just practice open science for now, and which is so beneficial for personal growth and career. And I enjoyed the discussion today so much. I learned a lot, and thank you so much for organizing this kind of event.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll conclude with Dr. Peters.
Yeah, echoing everything that has been said so far, share openly, don't fear scooping, all of those things. But I think that the most powerful advice is a combination of all of these things and a recognition of exactly what we're doing on this panel, which is, yes, be the change you want to see in the world, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk, but actually go out and talk to other people about why you're doing this. Engage in panels like this, push for open science, not just in your actions and the way that you do science yourself, but also in how you share what you see as the benefits of doing that with your broader community. And don't be afraid to get excited about it, as we have on this panel. So I've learned so much from just listening to the other experts on this panel that I didn't know before this panel, even though I'm sitting here on this panel. And so I think that that's a reflection of the power of hosting events like this, but things you can also do just as an individual. When you go to conferences, workshops, when you speak with people in your lab, don't just do open science. Push for why open science is the right way that we should be doing science, and learn from others as you're doing so.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you all so much for your time and also for the beautiful advice. I can speak personally just as someone that, and I'm going to also speak to not only you all, but also the people that we have in attendance here, and especially the undergraduates like me, just because I know like when I started my kind of research journey, open science was never really a thing that crossed my mind just because I didn't really know what it was. But I think that, as being part of the current lab that I'm in with Rosa, and then, attending conferences and seeing discussions, and then, seeing, for example, like Neuromatch Academy, and then downloading data sets off of Open Neuro and things like that, and using, open source toolboxes that the communities all contribute. I think those have really taught me the value of open science, and I'm so happy that, we were able to share all of these resources to this panel. And I hope specifically, to the undergrads who are just starting off with research, maybe that you also embrace like open science as part of your journey, just because, as all the panelists have mentioned, it can really accelerate your just research career. And, never underestimate the power of collaboration, just because, two people are going to work exponentially faster than just one, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, I just wanted to thank you all again so much for your time and your advice. And yeah, please stay connected on Discord. If people have questions after the panel, we'll make sure to get those posted on the Discord channel. And also, yeah, if you guys have any more resources you'd like to share, please send them our way, and we'll make sure that they are on our website as well. Rosa, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this. And I'm really happy that this happened, this came together. And really open science initiatives are the things that I learned what to do with open science, or I'm still learning. This is not like there's no ending point to learning. I strongly recommend just join an effort, just be there, just sit with the people who are doing it. That's where I started, and that's what led to BrainHack Vanderbilt. We did the first one last year, and this is the second year, and I'm hoping even when I leave this university that will carry on our legacy, and like the open science community here will grow and just flourish and like connect with the whole world. So I'm really excited for what's to come, and I really want to thank everyone for being here joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.